I want to introduce you to somebody who's in from Australia, and we're only having him here because he's got some nonsense out that says America will be a turnaround story and will be able to be great again. I mean, what a bunch of nonsense that is. Nick Adams is here. The name of the book is The American Boomerang. How are you?
Great to be with you, Glenn.
You are, we've met a few times now, and I'm struck by your optimism and by your, I don't know, your belief in us that is greater than our belief in us. And you're just an Australian, you're a regular guy, and now you're speaking all over America, and you fly over here on your own dime, and you speak in churches or anybody that will listen to you. Why?
Well, Glenn, I really do believe in America, and I think that sometimes a spectator sees more of the game. And I hope to offer Americans a perspective that perhaps they no longer have, or they may even have forgotten. And I seek to make America strong. I want America to feel relaxed and comfortable about its position in the world so that it can go forward and lead the world in the great way that it's done over so many decades. And I find it really unfortunate that America is losing that optimism, losing that vibrancy. And I'm just seeking to fill Americans up with hope.
Okay, why?
And how? How did that come about? Where did your optimism in America, where did your belief in America come from?
Well, I've read American history. And if you go back and you have a look throughout history, every single time that America's been under attack, every single time that freedom's been under attack, America somehow comes back. All the way going back to the early defeats by Britain in the War of Independence, to the loss of the Philippines, to Pearl Harbor, to September 11. Every single time America bounced back, and it did so with interest. And so I don't think that it's going to be any different this time. I think that there are 4 key things America needs to do to Boomerang.
Well, give them to me.
It's got to end the
grab a pen, everybody.
It's got to end the waste. It's got to pay back the debt. Mm-hmm. It's got to limit the government, and it's got to axe political correctness.
Well, it's not going to do any of those things, so good night, everybody.
So, like I said, right, America's coming back, right? Am I right?
Now, what gives you the idea, Nick, that where do you get the impression that we will do any of those things?
Yeah, let's take them one by one. What was the first one?
Well, the first
Spending,
one was
right?
to stop the waste.
Stop the waste. What gives you the crazy idea that Americans are going to say, you know what we should do? Stop printing money. Stop borrowing money. Stop having everything.
Glenn, I know exactly what you're saying. I totally understand the financial position America's in. Let me put it to you this way. If you had started a business the day that Jesus was born and you'd lost $1 million every year, you'd still be in a better position than the American government financially. Mm-hmm. But having said that...
By a lot.
But wait a minute. You're from Australia. You have a better chance of telling Americans... If you just look at the kangaroo and sew a giant pocket on the front of your skin, you could have a bigger credit card. And you'd have a better chance of convincing people to do that than cutting spending.
Look, I hear what you're saying, but I believe that America has got a different founding. I think a lot of America's shortcomings are policy failures, and policy failures can be reversed. You know, decline is it's not a condition. And I think that we really can fix up America and get it back to what it was. I mean, we don't want America to be a plodding wombat. We want it to be a flying kangaroo.
What happened? I don't even know what the first one is, and I don't think that kangaroos fly, but they might. When you look at us, is it because you look at us and say, hey, I saw history and it's great, or do you look at it as an Australian that says, we're screwed if America falls?
Absolutely. Look, I think it's a bit of both, but it's certainly the latter more than anything else. If you look around the world, Glenn, I mean, there is only one country, because America's more than a country. America is a value system, and the American value system is the best hope for humanity. The world needs to adopt American values, and that's what I try and convince people of in my book. that we need to embrace, the entire world needs to embrace American values.
Well, America needs to embrace American values.
Without a doubt. Traditional American, yes.
Are we, would you say we're more hated here or abroad? Who despises us, America, more? The American government or foreigners?
Well, that's a very difficult question to answer. I think that...
Well, you know how much the American government hates America.
And I also know how much... And I also know how much foreigners hate America. So
right.
It is a difficult question to answer. But look, I think that America needs to focus on what it's always been. Optimistic, charitable, patriotic. And it needs to embrace all of those things, and it needs to believe in itself again, Glenn. It needs to believe in itself again, because if America doesn't believe in itself, then you can't get anybody else to believe in America. And if America falls, let me tell you, there is nothing. There is absolutely nothing left. Terror, tyranny, and torture would reign. The world as we know it would be a place of...
You'll be speaking Chinese.
Exactly.
But with a cool accent. Just want to point that out.
But let's hope we don't have to order fries and a Coke in Mandarin anytime soon.
Yeah. Let me just give you... I have a friend who lives in Australia. She just wrote to me this morning, and she wrote some of the news in Australia. Let me see if I have it. She wrote me some of the news in Australia, and she wrote something very confusing to me. She was talking about the system in Australia, the education system in Australia. Let's see here. There's only one side presented in this case in Australia. It's not true history that you presented. She was talking about the Washington Redskins, and she was talking about the story, but we started going back and forth about, but you guys, your system of government is so politically correct. You guys, you don't get the truth on guns. You think we don't get the truth on guns. You really don't get the truth on guns. You have nothing. You're not free, really, at all. The idea of Australia and freedom is so far removed from the idea of American freedom. Would you agree or disagree with that?
You're exactly right, Glenn. That's why I'm here. That's why America's been the refuge for so many people like me, who are able to come to America and speak their mind and pursue their dream. And America welcomes those people with open arms, or at least it has until now. And that's the way it's got to remain, because political correctness is the great calamity of our time. They use it, the left uses it as this giant black snake. And, you know, if we don't stand up and fight it with every ounce and fibre of our being, it will deliver us at the knees of the very people and the cultures that we beat.
Well, did you see what Ted Cruz said yesterday? Ted Cruz said, how are you going to beat Islamic extremism if you can't name them by name? And that is...
Absolutely.
That's the truth. You know, the only guy that I have met in a long time, and I thought of this, Stu, when you were on the air about an hour ago, and you said, you know, here's some names, and I can't even say it, and you wouldn't even, it was the other F word right. That I'm not going to say now.
Yeah.
And remember when Sabo was in here, that artist? Mm-hmm. And he wrote some, I mean, he's done some art that's some really offensive stuff. And he looked at me and he was dead serious and he said, you know what the problem is? He said, I'm offended that you won't even use the word. And I said, no, because I know what world we're living in right now. And he used the word. And it wasn't used in a shocking way. He wasn't doing it for shock value. He was doing it so we could have a conversation. How are you going to stop political correctness when you can't use words or they will shut you down?
I know. I know. And believe me, I come from a country where it is, believe it or not, 1,000,000 times worse than America. How do you do it? Well, we have to stand up and fight. You know, Glenn, I get this all the time. Because I am a straight, white, Christian, middle-class male, I'm not supposed to have a voice. I'm not allowed to have an opinion. Well, that's certainly not going to happen. And that's what I would encourage everybody out there to be like. We need to have a voice. We need to stand up. We need to be committed to freedom, particularly freedom of speech. And if you can't speak freely in America, then where on earth can you speak freely?
How are we perceived over in Australia now? Because I think the American people are, and I think this is on all sides of the aisle, this is from every walk of life. If you're paying attention most people I don't think are paying attention. I bet there's 60% of this nation's not paying attention to what's going on. And when you tell them of the things that are going on, then they're saying, what? When did that happen? That can't be true. Oh, yeah, no, here it is. But those who are paying attention are now seeing an America they don't even recognize, and we look absurd. The cases we're making, for instance, with the IRS, the dog ate the homework, and gee, it was just a mistake that we put that hard drive in a shredder. I mean, it's absurd. Honestly, we look like the 1930s and the propaganda that came out of Europe, where you were saying, no, that's absolutely black. It's a white canvas. That's black. You understand me? That's black. How are we perceived? Or do we look as ridiculous overseas as some of us feel we do here?
Definitely, Glenn. I think that particularly under this president, America has really gone walkabout.
I don't know what that means.
Well, it means that
to do with the wombat and the flying.
It's lost its way. It's lost its course, and it has drifted away from its original path and its founding direction. And I think that if you have a look right around the world, America is weaker in every aspect, primarily because of the decisions of this administration. And that is an absolute tragedy. And I think that it's something that Americans should be aware of, and I think that increasingly they are becoming aware of that. And President Obama has really shown that you can't chew gum and walk at the same time, because from scandal to scandal, this administration really, I think, has contravened American principles and American values.
When did you become aware of this? Was it this president, or was it because we started becoming aware of it under Bush?
September 11. September 11, Glenn, really made me realize that we were at war. Our way of life was hated. We were hated.
Where were you on September 11th?
I was in Sydney, Australia. What
time was it?
I just turned 17. It was 10 p.m. at night. It was 10 p.m. at night, and, I remember I had an exam the next morning, and I saw it unfolding live. And I realized that it was my generation's, I think history has a very unique way of bestowing a role upon a generation. And I just had this epiphany as I saw those original images just being replayed over and over again, and then the second plane came in, and it was this feeling of we're at war. And what I couldn't understand, Glenn, what really upset me and what really kind of charted this course for me was that so many people were saying that America deserved it. So many people were saying, well, the chickens have come home to roost. And I rejected that so much. That angered me so much that I thought, well, what can I bring to this debate? What can I bring that no one else can? And, I'd looked at the Tocqueville, and I knew the story of an outsider coming to America and casting his eye, a fresh pair of eyes, looking at America and identifying what was different. And I thought, well, that's what I can bring now to America.
De Tocqueville found that our pulpits were the source of our greatness. What's the source of our greatness now?
Well, believe it or not, Glenn, again, this is the major industrialized nation that is Christian. Compared to Europe, compared to Australia, on average, 9% of Australians go to church at least once a week. Now, 49% of Americans identify as going to church once a week.
9%.
9%.
It's like that all over the world.
All over the world. In Europe, it hovers between
worse.
9 and 15%.
Yeah.
And a godless America would be Europe between Mexico and Canada. And thankfully, this country, even though I know that it would feel to an American who's been able to witness it slip away, who's seen religious liberty being eroded every day, believe it or not, I'm here to tell you that America is an enormously faithful country compared to the rest of the world. Now, is it good enough? No. Should it go back to what it was? Absolutely. But it's important to note that I still believe that Christianity is at the heart of the American exceptionalism web, and that's what I talk about in my book. I talk about the appreciation of the military, patriotism, the values of freedom and individual liberty. I think all of those go back to Christianity. And what is American exceptionalism? Well, it's God over man and man over government. And, you know, it is a limited space, and if government grows too big, well, that encroaches on man. And that's why, you know, to me, it's absolutely pivotal that every single person, no matter where they live, stands up and embraces the value system that is America and that has stood us in such great stead and stood America in such great stead for so long.
The name of the book is The American Boomerang. The author you've been listening to is Nick Adams. Colonel West has done the foreword to this book. I will tell you that, what are you now, about 30?
29.
29.
Close.
Nick is, we've met each other, I think, 3 times now, and I have been impressed with him every single time, and I am impressed with his dedication and his willingness to, long before he had a book, come over here and just be willing to pitch in and speak anywhere. I mean, the guy will do, I mean, I'll speak for Free Glenn on a street corner. I just need America to wake up. The guy is dedicated, quite honestly, more dedicated than I think most Americans are, to tell us the truth about ourselves. And you can find his truth in The American Boomerang, How the World's Greatest Turnaround Nation Will Do It Again. Nick Adams. Good to have you.
Thank you. Great to be with you.